Hi everyone, it's Ian Brown again, coming all the way from Australia, so I can share some things with you today. We're going to continue with our little themes that we've had in the past, where we're going to actually break up the segments so that what we've got is, the first segment I'm going to show you some artworks that you might like to do with your children at home. And then I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about the Reggio Emilia approach to learning, because I think that you might find that really interesting, and some of the things from that you might be able to adopt at home. Or you might be able to just sort of see, if you've got a child that's attending preschool, the sorts of things that they're doing at the school, and seeing if, you know, that you might be able to understand a bit better some of the philosophy that they've adopted. We're going to then look at some really interesting things about Voices of Children today. It's that project, the ongoing project that we've been talking about, where we're going to get you to have your child take some photographs, or you take some photographs, and how that's all going to come together. And then if we've got enough time, we'll have some questions and answers, and we might finish a little bit earlier today, and we'll just take it from there. So what we've done so far, just to recap very, very quickly, our first week we did some drawing activities with young children. We looked at how you could actually use things from inside your house or inside your kitchen, and take some and adopt some of the things that are easy to find, inexpensive, and just some resources that you could sort of gather together. And then last week we did some printing activities. And the printing activities, again, we did bubble wrap printing and a few others. So if you haven't actually, if you only just joined the webinar this week, or you missed out on last week, I think they've actually been uploaded, so you can go back and have a look at it. So there's enough activities there to sort of keep you going. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at clay and do some construction work. So look at how children actually manipulate clay, and they actually play with clay and get some fantastic results out of it. I decided that we're allowed here in Australia, we're not actually locked in our houses because of the pandemic. What we are is that we have to, like everybody else in the world, we have to socially isolate if we need to, or we need to socially distance and keep ourselves apart. So last week I used my granddaughter because I haven't got access to go in just into a preschool at the moment, because there's a bit of a lockdown there. So what I decided to do was I thought I would take her outside and we would do some of the activities. So what I've done is I've put a little video together which sort of explains the sorts of things that we were doing, and then what our whole process was about, taking it from looking at what sort of clay you should be using with children, and then taking her on a bushwalk and getting her outside, collecting some things, and then coming back and doing some wonderful little creative things at home. So I might just get us to switch on the MP4 now that I've put together, and we'll have a look at that. So this week we're going to be looking at how we can actually use clay with young children and get them to do some construction. There's lots of different sorts of clay. You can actually get this type of terracotta clay, which is what professionals use. It's quite inexpensive to buy. There's lots of different sorts of air drying clay, which means that you don't have to actually have a kiln to get it to dry. This one is a super light air clay in really bright colors. Traditional comes in terracotta colors and sort of a natural color. A big block of this is quite inexpensive for a school to buy, but you might just like to go to the shop and buy some of the air drying clay. Just ask for air drying and you'll find that it will actually work quite well with your children at home. I'm taking my granddaughter today and we're going on a bit of a bush. Make sure if you're actually taking anything from the bush that you only take twigs and sticks and things that are from broken branches and dead plants, so that you're not hurting the bush in any particular way. And then put the tray down in front of you here. If you move over this way, there you go. Here's the tray. And here's your rolling pin, put that on the tray. And here's your clay. And then you come over here and we'll start unpacking this bag and see what's in here. All the bits that you've got. You want to just tip them all out, maybe? Tip them out here?
Yeah, just tip them all out.
Because then you can put some little small ones. Here, you get them out.
I'm good at making a mess.
Alright, we'll tip them onto here.
I'm good at tipping things out.
Oh, we've done. Yeah, just try to keep them all together in a little bit. Alright.
We definitely can't use these.
That's alright, we'll pass them here.
Rubbish.
Then grab one of these, and what I want you to do is like put all of these into here. Alright? So grab them at these and put them into there. And then grab one of these. Yep. And put the little ones into this one.
These.
Yep. Okay, and this one.
Or is
Alright, right, that'll do. You can put it on the tray. Try not to get it on your clothes. That's alright. Okay. Can you get it? Big chunks. You might want to roll some out with the roller. I'm going to try to do that with the roller. Riley, you want to try with the roller?
I have.
Here's your rolling pin.
This one's done. Where do I put this?
Just put it on your tray at the back.
I could just like.
So Riley's put together her little constructions and we've got lots of fun things. Always with young children, you never know what you're going to get. So what we ended up with here was with a little forest, a little bush scene, and then also what she's added to it is that she's got a great big snail, and then she's also decided that she'd like to do a speedboat with a great big water spray coming out the back of the speedboat. But it was lots and lots of fun, just with some found objects and just with some air clay. So the air clay will take about 2 or 3 days just sitting outside to dry. Doesn't need to be put in the oven, doesn't need to have any sort of professional kiln. It's great fun for kids and they like to see it when it's finished because it ends up sort of like a real terracotta sort of pot by the time that they've actually finished with the clay. So a bit of fun today. It was nice to be actually able to get out into the bush, collect a few of those bits and pieces, which are sort of little gum nuts and things that we have in our Australian bush that I'm sure that you've got in your outside in the landscape as well. So I hope you enjoyed that today. Okay, so that's our little clay constructions. Just something to remember about the air clay. You don't need to actually add any water to it. Sometimes if you add water to clay, then it becomes all mushy and that's when the children get covered in dirt, clay, the whole sort of bit. Try to control it a little bit. The air dry clay that you actually get out of those packages can be actually rolled and manipulated quite well without adding any water to it. And then always just put down a piece of plastic or put it onto a plastic tray or something like that. The tray was a nice idea outside so that it was confined and that you could actually work inside it. You can stand up at a table or you can sit down like she was quite happy to sit on the floor and actually work it in that way. So that's fine. I've got another little video now. What I'm going to do today, the little snippets of videos, so they're not, you know, there's one that's going to be a little bit longer, which explains the next thing. But this first one is just a little bit about clay. So I might just put on the second video, and that's my colleague, Gay, who's going to talk about clay and the sorts of things that he would use it. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Gay Lindsay, and today we're talking about working with clay in early childhood settings. Very often in early childhood settings you'll see Play-Doh on the tables, and children do love to manipulate and make things with Play-Doh. But a material that isn't used often enough is clay, and it has wonderful properties which can really bring a richness to children's play and manipulation, and they can experiment with fine motor control, but essentially clay is a wonderful imaginative material. So let's have a look at where clay comes from. Too often in early childhood services, clay is avoided as a material because educators simply don't know how to get it, how to manipulate with it, how to use it, and how to store it. But essentially it comes packaged, even though originally it's a material that comes out of the ground. So it's dug out of the ground, and then an art supply company would package it up. So it comes in two forms. It either comes as firing clay, which is the sort of clay a potter would use if they were making a bowl or a vase. And it also comes as an air dry product, which can be used if you're wanting to create something that would dry without having to take it to a potter to be fired in a kiln. For early childhood purposes and for everyday play, I think the firing clay is much more effective because it doesn't get as crumbly and dry out as quickly. So the firing clay can be used again and again over a period of months and even years if you store it well. Whereas the air dry clay is a material that will dry out very quickly if you leave it in the air. When clay comes to you, it comes packaged in this plastic. So how do we then use it? So essentially, you want to open it up and check that it's nice and pliable, because if it's not pliable, children are going to get frustrated with it very quickly. This is a process that the children love to do, but as an educator, you'd want to demonstrate it first, and it's good fun. So essentially, you can use this tool, which is made of a couple of pieces of dowel and either a piece of wire or a piece of fishing line strung between them. And it's as simple as slicing through. So you just reach and pull towards yourself, and then you end up with a really lovely slab of clay to work with. It's really lovely. You can even use it in that form to support children to make marks. So provide them with pencils or clay tools to draw into the slab of clay, or to roll bits of clay and stick on to make patterns. But essentially, once you've got your piece of clay, you're ready to go. So children can then sit around the table and just experiment. I would recommend either working on a piece of hessian that's stretched across the table, or to purchase some cheap canvas mats. The reason it's good to work on that kind of surface, a porous surface or a fabric surface, rather than the tabletop, is that when children are experimenting with clay, it will quickly work its way and get stuck on the table. And that can be frustrating, not just for the children, but for yourself when it comes time to clean up. And if you want to do anything in early childhood art, it's think ahead and plan ahead so that the cleanup process isn't onerous. Things move quickly in an early childhood setting, and you want to always be able to tidy up and get ready for lunch without it being a big drama. So essentially then you want children to experiment and manipulate the material using their hands, especially when they're first being introduced to the material. So often people will provide children with the tools that come to work with clay very early in the piece. It's too soon to provide children with tools before they've had a chance to develop a relationship with the material. And by developing a relationship, I mean that you're getting to know the material. You're starting to learn its properties and what you can do to get different effects. So I would sit alongside children and talk them through the process as you're also playing with the clay. Ask them to tell you how they're doing things. So for example, if you observe a child at the table who knows how to roll a sausage, I'd draw attention to that and say to that child, oh my goodness, look at what you're doing. Can you show the others how you did that? And then you can support children to develop those skills. So It's just a matter then of playing and of enjoying the material. If you were introducing clay for the first time to babies, for example, or even to preschoolers who'd never encountered clay before, I wouldn't even necessarily be cutting the slabs first up or even sitting and experimenting. The very first thing you might do as a provocation is place the package of clay wrapped up, so intact, on a table and see what questions children ask. Let that be the beginning of the journey of discovery of that relationship with clay and the things it can do.
Okay, so that's, you can tell that little video was actually designed for teachers, but exactly every single thing that Gay had to say then could easily be transferred to the house and look at it in that way. So there's two options there. One was the air-dried clay, and the second option was your block clay that most potters actually use professionally. And like I said, you may find that there's a ceramics place or a pottery place near your house, and you can just go and purchase some of it. The slab of clay tends to be really quite cheap. And then the nice part about that is it stays in the plastic, and then you can actually use it over and over for lots of times. So clay is a great thing for kids to actually be able to use. So I'm going to change tack at this point, and I'm going to move in a different direction. We've talked about, this is what we're going to do each week. We're going to actually look at an artwork, an art process. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to have a look at the sorts of things that might be interesting to you as parents from an education point of view, and the sorts of things that to try and understand, what learning is taking place with children. So today what I wanted to speak about was the Reggio Emilia approach to early childhood learning. And that big mouthful is that quite often, and I don't know whether your children are actually attending preschools at the moment or early childhood centres, but quite often you'll see a sign that says, oh, we're a Reggio Emilia preschool, or we've adopted that approach, or we've taken some of the things from the approach and we're going to actually sort of implement them within our preschool. What I want to do today is I want to give you an introduction to this approach to learning. And then next week, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about, well, all right, that we've learned the theory behind it or the philosophy behind it. How then can we actually implement that in some of the things that we do at home, which you can. And then you can hang a sign on your door that says that you're a Reggio Emilia home, and you've got that philosophy. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to actually take you through a really nice video that just explains very quickly what the approach is about. And then what I would like you to do is while you're watching it, sort of start to think about, well, are they the things that you're seeing happening to your child? Are they the sorts of approaches that your school actually adopts, or your early learning centre? Do they do those sorts of things? And then I'm going to come back and I will actually sort of unpack some of those things. So let's have the next video 3, the Reggio Emilia education one. Thank you.
In response to the tragedy of World War II, people from the town Reggio Emilia developed a new model of education. War ought to never happen again. Led by Loris Malaguzzi, a teacher, their idea was to enhance a child's learning through real-life experiences instead of a fixed curriculum, so that each child develops a love for discovery, forms a personality of their own, and learns to respect others. Land, money, food, and skills for the first preschool were provided by the community. The Reggio Emilia approach is based on the philosophy of an image of a child. All children are viewed full of
Hi there. Looks like we might have a problem with the video.
potential, with an innate sense of curiosity and endless imagination. They are creative, capable of constructing their own learning, and they have a natural interest to explore. While they follow their own interests, they also stay connected with others. Adults nurture their learning by providing a rich environment and support. Instead of a one-size-fits-all curriculum, Reggio Emilia uses a child-centered approach and project-based learning. Projects can emerge anytime, for example during play. Teachers can observe and create opportunities for new learning at a specific instance. For example, by opening up new environments, letting children raise thought-provoking questions, or by inviting others to collaborate. After an intervention, the children take control and progress independently until the project is finished and can be shared with others. Throughout a project, children naturally embody the spirit of researchers, risk-takers, designers, and explorers. They make hypotheses, try new things, investigate, play, and imagine. To progress, the explorers raise the questions, the researchers give feedback, and the designers demonstrate ideas and prototypes. Lastly, they all turn their theories into reality and construct experiments together. The learning becomes social, with endless ways to solve specific problems. To promote the development of creativity, teachers step aside and let mistakes happen. The conflicts that can follow nurture their social skills, because conflicts teach children to speak, to listen, to argue, and to discuss. Then learn to accept different opinions and to respect others for who they are. If two kids discuss a problem, a third can have an idea, and the entire group learns the value of teamwork. Teachers document projects through pictures, videos, or written observations. The learnings become visible in photographs, drawings, or sculptures. Ideas, quotes, and transcripts of conversations are put onto the walls. The children can later revisit their achievements, see projects that were left unfinished, and learn that failure is part of the path to progress. They build confidence in their own abilities. But teachers aren't instructors. Instead, they are companions in the child's own journey of discovery. They can introduce books, show new tools, or offer entirely new perspectives. However, they always remain mindful not to take over the constructive learning process, knowing that this limits a child's endless imagination and motivation. The children are fully in charge and develop a sense of ownership of their own progress. The foundation for a love for lifelong learning. Malaguzzi believed that there are 100 languages children can use to express themselves. They paint, sculpt, drum, whisper, and hark. They build, listen, speak, or sing and dance. And they play, which Einstein allegedly said is the highest form of research. Children learn from adults, other students, the environment, which is regarded as the third teacher. Rich in materials, the space is designed to spark curiosity, creation, and discovery. Ideally, there is an open kitchen and big windows, so the children can see what's happening outside, just like at an Italian town square, a piazza, where we can observe the lives of other members of our community. Parents are regarded as the last part of this education. To deepen their knowledge of a child-centered education, they are encouraged to learn from and with the teachers and children. So when the children come home after school, they can continue to be researchers, risk-takers, and explorers. Malaguzzi once said, "Stand aside for a while and leave room for learning. Observe carefully what children do. And then, if you have understood well, perhaps teaching will be different from before." Maybe one day our small researchers and explorers will grow into the big inventors and great explorers.
Okay. Okay, so that was a very brief introduction to a particular approach to the way young children learn. And you would have noticed in that last video, the one before that Gay did about clay, she actually used the term provocation. And she said, instead of just opening the clay, undoing it, handing it all out to the children, what would be nice is if you actually put the clay down in front of them, got them inquiring about what's in the bag, what's the clay doing there, what do they use clay for, and all those sorts of things. And that's what they refer to as a provocation, which is part of that Reggio Emilia approach. So it was really interesting to hear her use that term, because they're some of the terms that you might find in your early learning centres. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to, because what I've done is that video is great, the way it actually sort of lays it all out. But I've taken some of the key points and I've put them together on a PowerPoint so that you can actually have a look at it with a few images, just sort of remind you of some of the things. So I'll share my screen now. Okay, so Reggio Emilia. As you can tell, Reggio Emilia is an Italian name. It's the name of a small village that is actually in Italy, and then after the Second World War, they got together and decided that they needed to, as a community, sort of pull together the approach for some type of model of education. So what I've got here is it a theory, or is it a philosophy, or is it a model for education? Now, it will vary on who's talking to you about it, because if you talk to the people from Reggio Emilia, they'll probably say that it's not a theory. They might even say that it's not actually a philosophy, even though we probably think it is, because there's a philosophy about the way children should be taught. It is definitely a model for education. It's a way of setting up children to actually learn in a particular mode, and in a successful mode. It's now all across the world that model of education is being used everywhere. And I'm sure in your area or your region, it would be the same. So here's some of the key points that would come from it. For example, you need to give children real, authentic experiences. And you will find that, and this is where I'm saying that it doesn't matter whether you're talking about being in an early childhood setting or if you're actually talking about being at home. These are some of the principles that you might be able to adopt with your children. So one of them is to actually give them some real life experiences. And you'll notice, that my first video where I took my granddaughter Riley out for the day, and we went out and we actually gathered those gum nuts. Instead, I could have just gone, grabbed a bag and, picked up some on the way. But no, I took her out, and it was her opportunity for her to actually find them and break them and collect them and find the ones that she really liked rather than the ones that I probably would have chosen for her. So that's what we're talking about with, real life experiences, getting down, getting dirty, getting muddy, and enjoying it. Children have an innate love for trying to understand and discover things. Quite often, if you've got young preschoolers, and you'll know this, is that they will like to have some time on their own where they actually sit there and they look for things, or they unpack things, or they play. And quite often what they're doing is that they're discovering new and exciting things about the world as they're doing it. So give them lots of opportunities, and part of the let me just go back to sharing. I'm not sure why that's doing that. Part of the Reggio Emilia approach is for the children to actually fail in some ways. And so that's a funny thing to say, but, to take some risks and to solve some problems, and that's an important one. The other one is that because the design of the model for education is around working and collaborating with other children, then one of the things that they have to learn is that idea that they need to respect one another. So in other words, you can't work as a team. Now, if you translate this into an adult's viewpoint about, if you're in the work situation, for example, if you're, Sorry, I'll just go back to that. Not sure why it's doing this. Okay. So if you think about it, you know, in this pandemic time, so what we're doing here is that we have to actually work in teams, and we have to work remotely in teams. So I would imagine it's the same in your country. In Australia at the moment, everybody is working from home, everybody's using Zoom, they're having meetings, and so there's a certain way that you need to actually respect, you need to be able to talk, you need to wait till somebody else has their go, you need to listen to what people are saying. And in an Emilia, a Reggio approach, I'll just call it Reggio from this point on, the Reggio approach is that you need to respect others. In other words, everybody has an opinion and everybody has the right to talk. So the philosophy refers to it as the image of the child. They just take that whole idea that children are naturally curious, they're naturally imaginative, and they're naturally creative. It's not something that you teach. It just comes naturally to children. So the image of the child is that you should always be looking at children as being curious and imaginative human beings who are enjoying what they're doing and looking to solve problems and to take risks and to enjoy life. The other one, which is an interesting one, which is a bit difficult to sort of understand sometimes, is the idea that children are capable of constructing their own learning. Now, if you had a classroom of children and they're all sitting in rows and they're all facing the front of the room, and there's a teacher up the front of the room and they're controlling the learning, then that is not constructing their own learning. That's actually teacher-centered, teacher-directed learning that's happening in the classroom. So the lovely part about early childhood settings is that they tend to be looking at how children construct their own learning. And then as schools go on, if you think about it, you know, that it's free and open in an early childhood setting. It gets a little bit more confined as they tend to go into primary schools. And then as they go into secondary schools, sometimes, you know, not all subjects, but some subjects become back to where, you know, it's much more teacher directed with the teacher standing at the front of the classroom. So what this is saying is that, you know, the Reggio approach, a child will be fascinated by something, or they'll be interested in something which will lead to something else. So you don't necessarily have a curriculum where you're totally planned from the beginning of the day that you know exactly what you're going to do, because what happens is that when that child comes in with something that they've discovered from home, or they bring in that great big bowl of gum nuts and things that we collected on the science, that gives you a start to actually then think about it. And quite often, a lot of the experiences are actually motivated by things that are actually happening outside of the classroom. So as parents and teachers, you need to provide a sort of a rich learning environment and support. So what we're talking about here is that they need to have some interesting things that they can actually play with and experiment with and try and test and solve some problems. And the lovely part about the Reggio approach is that often when you go into, and we'll talk about this a bit more next week, often when you go into their classrooms, you will find that that they're set up in particular ways, or, you know, things are just not thrown in, you know, plastic tubs. That you'll find that they're placed in baskets, they're grouped together, they're grouped by colour, they're grouped by texture, and it makes it interesting for, let me just do this again, and it makes it interesting for them to actually, sorry. So, a child-centered approach and project-based. This is the other side of it, which was what we're looking at in terms of taking the child as being the centre of the learning and work out the sorts of things that they might be interested in. Play is such an important part of the early childhood curriculum. And so early childhood settings, you'll find that most early childhood settings are set up working from a play situation. So they're not just over in the corner, you know, just looking like they're playing with toys, which is something that they could probably do at home. They're socializing, they're risk-taking, they're solving problems, they're having fun, they're communicating with their peers, they're communicating with their teachers, they're make-believe, they're imaginative approaches, and it's all through play. You just need to stand back and look at your own child and you'll understand how important play is. All right, so the other thing is that children should take risks and they should explore and they should investigate. So that means, you know, giving them the opportunities to actually do those things by going out, looking at things, picking up things, as long as they're safe and as long as they, you know, that you as a parent are making sure that they're in a safe environment. A bit like our first video where we went for that bushwalk. You know, I was directing the walk, but she was sort of leading the way and collecting the bits and pieces that she needed. So learning is about being social. Learning, and the Reggio approach means that, you know, it's important that, you know, and it's very difficult now because of the working from home. Quite often your child will be on their own, but the ideal way to learn is to actually learn with people beside you. So working in teams, working together, working around a table, you will find in a Reggio approach early learning setting, it'll be much more about the social side of things, being able to communicate with their friends, being able to talk and discuss. Conflict is, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I mean, you work as a team member, then conflict is going to happen. And this, what Reggio is saying is that it's okay to have conflict, because if you have conflict, then you're going to be able to understand others' points of view. You're going to be able to discuss and argue and reason in some way. And that's important, because that life, you know, it mimics life all the way through, is that you're not going to get your own way the whole time. You do have to share. And the other nice part about it is that you can actually understand why you have to actually do some of these things. So children actually need to respect one another. And so they need to learn to be able to listen to different opinions, and they need to be able to understand what's going on in the world. Parents should be supporting the learning, all right? And this is an important thing. We'll talk about this again next week. The idea of how much support do you give your children?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry to disturb you, but we see a blank slide on the screen. It's just an empty white slide. Can you just check that, please? And
all right, then. So it's not coming through?
It's not coming through. It's just a blank slide.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Let's go back. Let's stop sharing then. Okay, I'm back. So it wasn't coming through at all?
That's all. I'm sorry. Please go on. Sorry.
All right, let me try it again.
No, again, the same thing.
Is it coming through now?
No.
No. Well, it says you are screen sharing and it's not coming through. Okay, then not a problem. All right, we'll have to go to, we'll try something else, and I'll just talk over the last couple of slides. Was my voice coming through?
Yes, the voice was okay.
The voice was all right? Okay, not a problem. All right, let me just talk about the last two slides and then what we will do, because we are running out of time now. And I notice that we have lots of, oh, I see, that's where people are saying they can only see a white page. What I will do is I will send you the PowerPoint, and then it could be uploaded to the website. Would that be okay? All right, let me just, we'll try it one more time and see what happens. So is my screen sharing or not?
Ian, no, your screen is not sharing, and perhaps because you have a Mac and the latest update of the Zoom platform, you needed to give permission through the settings for your screen share to come through. So perhaps we need to check that.
I'm just getting the, yeah. I'm not sure why, because it's, what about that?
Now we can see it.
Now we can see?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So what I would like to do, I'm glad that it's sharing now, because I just want to take the last couple of minutes to, because we're running out of time, is to talk about the voices. But if I just go back, the last couple of ones that I talked about, let me just go back a few, was that learning is social, conflict is okay, as it allows children to argue and discuss and reason. Children need to be able to respect others and listen to different opinions. And then parents should be able to support the learning. And like I said, we'll talk about that next week. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the Reggio approach. Can I just check we are still seeing my screen, my PowerPoint?
Yes, no, it is okay.
Okay then. All right, so I've only got about 5 minutes or so left. So what I would like to do is just very quickly talk to you today. The Voices of Children project, this is the third part of our project today. So what we were trying to get you to do for weeks 1 and 2 is to take some pictures of your children working, and then get your children to take some pictures of their artworks as they've been coming through. And so that's what we did in weeks 1 and 2. And I'd like you to make sure that you hold on to those images. This time, what we're going to do this week is what we'd like you to do in the next week that's coming up, is we're calling it looking up. And the idea is that you take your child and if you can take them outside, or if you can go and visit somewhere safely, you give your camera, or you give your iPad, or you give them your digital camera, and get your children to actually look up and take some photographs of what it's like to look up. And you might want to discuss this with the, so it may be anywhere. It might be inside a mosque, or it may be outside. And the idea is that, you know, lots of children, if you just give them their camera, you will find that they will take things that you don't even think about. They'll take pictures of the sky, pictures of trees. You've got some magnificent buildings in your area, then I would suggest that you go out and see what your child does. Just give them the camera, or give them the iPhone, and let them take the photograph and see what happens. It's not going to be perfect, or then again, it might be. And what it is that if you just talk about what does it mean to look up, and what do you see when you look up? Do you only see the sky, or do you see other things? And like I said, you've got some beautiful buildings there that you might be able to work with children. When I visited your mosque, you know, I spent more time looking up into the ceiling of it than I was sort of looking even, you know, from looking across, because it's just so beautiful up inside. And then when I went to the Louvre, you know, and I walked through there was some beautiful things to look at. But I spent a lot of the time looking up into the ceiling. So you ask your child what they would like to take, but they may be something as simple as palm trees, or looking up through the trees. It may be lying in their bed, looking up at some of the toys and things that they have in their bedroom, because that's a special place for children. Children love their bedrooms. I don't know whether you've got a bedroom like this that's so special it's got a light like that, but it would be nice just to lie on the ground and then take some photographs looking up. So that's the theme for this week. I'm going to give you a different theme every week. This theme for this week is looking up. So hopefully, I'll stop sharing. So hopefully what we'll do now is start to collect the images that you've got. So week 1, some of you drawing ones. Somebody asked me, it was interesting, the worksheet, I've included a worksheet, and the worksheet talks about one of the parents in the first week asked me whether, in the question time, our children's, their little boy, who was 3, was only scribbling. And I said, you know, in a few weeks' time, I'm going to actually talk to you about the stages of development that children go through. And scribbling is an important part of it. But I would suggest, unless she said, oh, should I be taking a photograph of his scribbling? Well, of course you should. But I would suggest that, you know, what might be nice is to actually get him to actually take a photograph of the artwork, and then one where he's holding the artwork, and then you might take a picture of him. So if, you know, like those first couple of slides that I showed you where it's a picture of the artwork, but it's also a picture of the children working on it in some way. So that's important. So that the 3 things that we were looking at today was, and we're, you know, time's getting close. The 3 things we're looking at today is the idea of using clay with children. The sorts of things that would make it interesting for them is to actually not just get them to roll out. Quite often, if you give children clay, what they will do is they will just roll something out, make long, thin, like sausages, snakes, and they'll turn it around and turn it into a little pot. That's fun as well. But it's also nice to actually construct something and give them some things that they can actually add to it, some sticks and some twigs. And so it becomes an imaginary creature or something that they're sort of looking at that they haven't seen before, something a bit more imaginative. So it's not always about making a cup. It may be something a bit more that they can actually push and extend. And you'll notice that every week that I talk to you, I talk about taking one little simple idea and then pushing it a bit further and going in a different direction with it, or making it a little bit more interesting. Because the whole point of it is that every single thing that you're doing, I believe, that you're doing, it's really nice to be able to say to them, you know, what is it you're making? Where do you think that creature might live? Get them to use their imagination, get them to be creative in the way they think, and just get a bit more excited about it. So, we talked a little bit about Reggio today, and unfortunately, I'm sorry about the PowerPoint not showing through, and you just got my voice. So what we'll do is that I've got another couple of little videos that I will show you next week, and it'll all come together then, because it'll be able to give you some ideas about how, as a parent, you could actually adopt some of those really good educational ideas and that model of learning and do it in that way. So, and then the final thing is your voices of children. So we're going to continue that on and keep going with that. And hopefully this week, we're going to be getting your child to look up. You're going to get them to use their phones, use their cameras, and actually look up in the air and see the things that are above them, not necessarily the things that are at ground level. So I hope that that's been helpful for you this afternoon. And next week, we'll continue that whole idea about the education model and what it's about. Thank you very much.